Hello and welcome. My name is Alyssa and this is Into the Heart Wild. And today I am bringing you guys not one, but two reviews. That's right, you heard that right, two. And I'm bringing you two because they're both very short books. They're both very short books. I think they're both less than 200 pages each. One is under 200. The other one is just like 15 over 200. They both have an element in common, and that would be the fact that they are Arthurian based. And if you're new to the channel, I love Arthurian based tales. I love the Arthurian legends. They are one of my favorites. I have a shelf dedicated to them. At some point, I will be making a video going over all the books that are currently in my King Arthur collection. So that is something that will come down the road. But there are some in the collection that I obviously have not read yet. And so I am finally getting around to reading some of those, which is what both of these are. One is actually a new addition to my collection because I had just found it at the beginning of February. So I will be giving you guys a review of Merlin's Brook by Jane Yolen and Black Horses for the King by Anne McCaffrey. So we will start with Merlin's Brook. This is the one that I actually just picked up at the beginning of February. I found it at Half Price Books for $1.49, and I was like, King Arthur, $1.49, Jane Yolen, let's do it. Because I have read other Arthurian tales by Jane Yolen. She has quite an extensive catalog full of them. Now, when I initially picked this up, obviously I read the little back piece and everything, and I assumed it was going to be just like a little tale that focused on Merlin. This is actually a collection of short stories or excerpts, did I say that right? From other books that she has written that are Arthurian based. They all do focus around Merlin, except for one that focused around Guinevere, and I didn't like the middle of that one. I didn't like that one at all. I didn't like the idea of Merlin having people beat her so she would look to him as her savior. That was a little weird. But ultimately it's I think 8 stories. Let me double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12. It's 12 stories. It felt like 8, probably because 2 of them I was actually able to skip because I have already read them. One of them being called The Dragon Boy, which you can find sold separately. And it is actually geared towards a middle grade audience. And then the other one was actually an excerpt from the, where is it? I don't think it's on this shelf. It is on this shelf. It's just facing the wrong way. It's an excerpt from this one by her, which as you can see is a full story. So I thought that was very interesting that she had that one in there. But yeah, it's just a small little collection of stories around Merlin. They don't really connect to each other. They kind of take place at different times around Merlin's life, from his birth to when he has gone and passed. There is even, the very last one is actually a tale in the present day where they have made claims of finding Merlin's tomb and such. So if you're into the idea of just reading a bunch of very short stories, I think this is a really fun one to pick up because I do think Yolen has a way with the Arthurian tales. She does use different variations of the names, from anywhere from Merlinius to Merlin, Artos to Arthur. So depending on which variation she decides to choose for the name spelling, that is what she does, which is fine with me. We even get like a quick little story about, the sword, Excalibur and everything, and its creation. So it like I said, it's just a quick little, if you want to just read a bunch of different short little stories revolving mostly around Merlin, this will definitely be the one to pick up. I do have to say The Dragon Boy though, because I had read it outside of this through the library, that one would probably be my favorite throughout the entire book, even though I did not read it a second time. The second time through, it was actually funny. As I was reading it, I was like, I read this like 2 months ago. which is why I opted to not go ahead and just read it again in this one. But it's not a full-length story. It's just different short stories or excerpts from other stories that Jane Yolen has done that focus around Merlin. Now, this one, Black Horses for the King by Anne McCaffrey. I found this, I want to say, about 4 or 5 years ago when I was hunting down all of my Pern books. And this was there on the shelf, and I was like, I've never heard of this. And then the tagline, the story of King Arthur as it has never been told before. And I was like, she did a King Arthur book? Because, like, I love McCaffrey's Pern World, and I've only heard of her other science fiction books. So when I found this, I was like, hold on, I need to own this. And even the lady at the used bookstore was like, I've never heard of this book by her. And then she was like, I didn't even know we sold this here. And I was like, I've never heard of it either. So I finally read it this month. And this is this is one of those books where it's only going to appeal to a very, very specific niche of person. Like, I'm just and I am that person. Okay, like, I am that person. And I'm not saying that because it's Arthurian based. I'm saying it because of the content of the story. So, first of all, I want to say the tagline, the story of King Arthur as it's never been told before. You want to know why? Because it doesn't focus on him. It doesn't focus on Arthur. The story focuses on Galwin, a boy who works on a ship with his super abusive, horrible uncle that Arthur, who in this book is called Artos. That is the name that she went with, Lord Artos. That him and his men are, riding on this boat because he is on his way to get horses. Yes, it's not called Black Horses for the King for nothing, okay? He is on his journey to get to Septimania so that he can get the biggest, scariest war horses possible so that they can take them to war against the Saxons that are running on their lands. Because what better way to scare your enemy than a big giant horse? Okay? And Galwin gets wrapped up in this because Galwin is like, this man he's a god. He's amazing. Like, he's kind, he's sweet, he's everything. Because Artos, he treats him like a person. He's like, you're a person with, like, feelings, and you're an extremely smart boy, because this boy can speak so many languages, and he's picked up on so many languages because of what his father's old profession was until his father had passed away, which is why he's now working with his super abusive, horrible uncle. And in the end, Galwin ends up leaving, obviously, the ship life behind, and helps Arthur, get these horses. And then the story the story takes a turn, and instead of focusing on just getting these horses, it focuses on the horses. It, like, zeroes in. I learned so much about horses in this book. And this is why I said, like, it's gonna appeal to a very niche person, and that would be horse girls, which I still at heart am. Like, when I was a young little gal, I love horses, okay? Like, it's just who I am. I love them. I think they're beautiful, majestic creatures. And so I'm the kind where, like, I don't get upset if they're used in, like, fantasy books, like, over and over and over again, because, like, it makes my little horse girl heart happy, okay? So the fact that this book went from, I want to work for Arthur and help him get these horses too, we're now only going to focus on the horses. We're going to focus on, like, taking care of them. How there's literally a whole plot around creating horseshoes. It's literally, like, a good chunk of the plot of this book is around creating horseshoes for the horses to protect their feet. Because that's the one issue they keep having with horses, is the fact that their feet are so sensitive, and the slightest nick, cut, rock getting lodged in there can cause all kinds of ailments to a horse. And at the time, everyone was like, oh, well, leg is gone, we gotta kill it. Like, and there is a blacksmith in this book who's like, no, shoes. they call them sandals actually throughout the whole book. They're called sandals. We're gonna make metal sandals for the horses. And so there's just the whole middle, after we get these horses, the story just focuses in on taking care of the horses, creating horseshoes for them, because Arthur ends up completely being removed from the story because he goes to Camelot to set up his headquarters. And so the story focuses on Gawain and him learning how to care for the horses and learn how to make the metal shoes for them, and helping devise the best metal shoe for these horses. Because after he had like talked to the blacksmith / like horse doctor, you know, he was like, I understand what we're trying to do here. Like, this makes a lot of sense. And it just, I was so captured by it. I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever read in my life. Because it just spoke to that girl in me who loves horses and loved learning about them. And so there is, though, a subplot that involves Gawain and another boy who... Gawain is basically in like the greatest of good graces with Arthos, and is basically like kind of like put on a higher pedestal compared to the other boys. And there's another boy who gets very jealous of this, and he's like, I'm the greatest horse rider ever. I can ride Archer's horse, because, you know, he has the horse that's like super temperamental and will only listen to one kind of person. And aside from Arthos, like, Gawain is like the other character that this horse will abide by and listen to. And this, of course, upsets this other boy. He devises this whole plan to try and like end up riding this horse to Camelot and whatnot, and ends up getting himself kicked out of the company. And then from there, he's kind of like this background shadow character who, through the years, has held a grudge. Like, he holds the longest grudge and keeps trying to like either kill Gawain or injure one of the horses. Specifically, he wants to injure Arthos's horse, because that's the one that he feels he was, you know, hit with the disgrace with and everything. So, and it goes all the way through like the end of the story and everything, and like wrapped that up like really well and everything. I do have to say, she did make me cry, because like, how dare you? There is animal death, okay? There is. Obviously, we know what death the animal is based around, okay? But it was like one of those, I was crying. I was crying over this animal. I was crying over this horse, okay? I was so sad. But yeah, like, it's because like when you go and look up reviews for this book, it's a lot of people being like, it's just a book about horses. It's just a book about horses. Like, and for the most part, it's got like roughly like a 3-star rating or whatever across the board. And there's a lot of 2 stars for it, because it's, like I said, it's only going to appeal to like a specific type of reader. And I am that reader. I would have read it in one day had I not started it at like 8:00 at night. But I read majority of it. I want to say I read about that much. And then I only had like that much left. So I read it in basically under 24 hours. But I was glued to this. So, you know, if you want so it's not the tagline, how it said like, oh, the story of King Arthur, it's never been told before. It's more like a story within the world of King Arthur, because it doesn't focus on King Arthur. Like, yeah, you get to see Camelot, and you get to see like the Round Table. You get to meet a couple of the knights, you know, but it ultimately focuses on Gawain being this boy who comes into the world of Arthur and like takes care of these horses, and then from there becomes like the caregiver and the teacher of how to make like these shoes for the horses to save them and their feet. So it's an interesting King Arthur story. I think if you're like super, super into King Arthur, it's something that could appeal to you, or if you're super into horses. Other than that, it's probably something that a lot of King Arthur fans would probably kind of just be like, oh, this is weird and boring, like whatever. But I personally loved it. And I think that's all that matters. So that is my 2 for review for you guys. Obviously, I had more to say about the second one than I did the first, but either way, those are 2 of the King Arthur books that I have read in my collection very recently. So if you have any comments or anything, go ahead and drop them down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!